Hello, this is a tutorial for the Pathfinder Society Adventure Card Guild, specifically dealing with random rewards, upgrades, and rebuilding your deck at the end of a scenario. Everything you need to be a part of the PACG can be found online at paizo.com. There's a free document called the Guide to Pathfinder Society Adventure Card Guild Organized Play that spells all this out. Additionally, you can find the base rules for the Pathfinder Adventure card game there. If you're playing the PACG, you're going to want to read the Skull and Shackles base set rules. Alright, so let's get into dealing with random rewards, upgrades, and rebuilding at the end of the scenario. So, when you play a scenario and you succeed at it, you are going to get a reward of some type. And sometimes the reward is what's called a random card. Might be a specific random card, like a weapon or an item, or it might say choose any type of boon and draw a random card of that type. So, for instance, in the first scenario of the current adventure path for the PACG, you got Ghosts of the Deep. If you successfully complete the scenario, and you defeat the villain, each character gets a random weapon or spell. What does this mean, you might say? That means first thing you got to do is pick what you're going to get. Are you going to get a random weapon or a spell? I have currently Valoros set up. That's who I'm playing. He's a fighter. He doesn't care about spells. So Valoros says, I want a random weapon. So to do that, what he does is he goes back to everything that he's got left in his weapons pile from his character deck, the fighter character deck, and he takes every card whose set indicator is less than or equal to the adventure number. This is the Ghosts of the Deep as part of the adventure Lost at Sea, and it's an adventure of 1. So he takes any set indicator 1 or less card and puts them into a random pile. For him, that would be the Shockglaive, which is a 1, the Great Club, the Ranseur, the Warhammer, the Spiked Chain, the Lucerne Hammer, and the Cestus +1. He takes all those and he randomizes them up and then picks one. Personally, I tend to have like another player randomly choose after I shuffle it up. Just don't want to be accused of like making the perfect pick, but let's say he's gonna get this. He's gonna get a Great Club. So when you get a random award, you take the random award, you put it in your deck. And you get to use that to help you rebuild at the end here. So that's how you deal with random rewards. Trick is you take every card whose set indicator is less than or equal to the adventure number. In this case, 1. I imagine, although we haven't seen it yet because we're still in the adventure 1 part of the PACG, that later on, once we get into the 3s and 4s, you'll start to see something like gain a random card who doesn't have the basic or doesn't have the basic or elite trait. If something like that were to happen, you would gather all those cards. Let's say it was you can gain any random weapon without the basic or elite trait instead. And I would see the Ranseur has the elite trait, so wham, you're gone. I'd see the Shockglaive is good, doesn't have the basic or elite trait. Spike Chain, you're good. I'd see the Warhammer, got the elite trait, you're out. I'd see the Lucerne Hammer there, got the elite trait, you're gone. Cestus +1 would be good, and originally I had the Great Club, which doesn't have the basic or elite trait. So then I'd take those, shuffle them up, and figure it out. Alright, anyways, we had drawn the Great Club earlier, so that goes into the pile. And then all the rest of these weapons are going to go back into this pile here. Okay, so that is random rewards. The next thing I want to deal with is upgrades. So at the end of the scenario, you get your reward. The next thing you have to do is deal with upgrades. regardless of whether you win or lose the scenario, as long as you're alive at the end of it, you get an upgrade. So to deal with upgrades, what everyone has to do is go through their deck and pull out every card whose tag up at the top doesn't match their class deck. So this one says fighter class deck. So that one's good, it stays. So you might get ones like, there might be a cleric class deck card in your hand because the cleric handed you off a weapon or an item that thought you might be able to use better than the cleric could. If you have somebody else's card that belongs in a different class deck, you return it to them. And then you take all the cards that you gained that have the adventure path symbol up top, so skull and shackles in this case, and those all just get laid out on the table for everyone to see. So, for instance, we might have the Animal Bane Dagger +1, the Amulet of Fortitude, the Dagger, the Blessing of Pharasma, and the Arcane Armor here. Now, I'm going to turn these guys to the side a little bit here so we can see a little bit of all of them. More or less. Come on. There we go. So, the only thing that matters in these cards is its type. So that's a spell, that's a blessing, that's a weapon, and its set indicator. B in this case, 1 in that case. Everything else about the card really doesn't matter, because what you're going to do is say everybody gets one of these cards at the end. They get to choose. There's a number of different ways for figuring out who gets what card. It's all spelled out in the Pathfinder Society Adventure Card Guild Organized Play document that you can get at paizo.com. I'm not going to go into the specifics there, but there's a bunch of detailed ways that this can be figured out. But when you choose one, what it becomes is essentially like a little ticket that you can use to get a card from your class deck. So if I picked the Blessing of Pharasma, I could take any other blessing with the B set indicator from my class deck and add it to my character deck. So the options for me with Valorous would be another Blessing of the Gods, or the Blessing of Gorum, or the Blessing of Caden Kalim. Hope I pronounced that right. Let's say that if I chose the Blessing of Pharasma, I would go with the Blessing of Gorum. I'd put the Blessing of Gorum in my character deck, take the Blessing of Pharasma, toss it back into the main box, and put the other blessings back in my blessing deck. So I'm going to take that Blessing of Gorum out now and put the Blessing of Pharasma back. Let's say that instead I was really wanting that weapon 1. So, and nobody else has any objections, I get the Animal Bane Dagger +1, which is really just a weapon with a set indicator of 1. I can pick any weapon from my class deck that has the weapon type and the set indicator of 1. So I could get a Cestus +1, a Lucerne Hammer, or a Shock Glaive. Going to pause the film here for a second to clean up a little mistake. In addition to spending your 1 set indicator weapon, in this particular case on any 1 set indicator weapon, you can also spend it for a lesser set indicator weapon, in this case a B set indicator weapon if you so choose. So you can take either a 1 or a B in this particular case. I personally like the Shock Glaive, so I'm going to take that and add it to my class deck. The Animal Bane Dagger would get tossed to the side, and the rest of the weapons would go back. So that's the basic idea of upgrades. So now, once you're done choosing your upgrade, you have to rebuild. I'm going to get rid of the rest of these cards here. Looking at Valorous, I start looking at what his card requirements are and what cards I have in my deck. So if I look here, I'm going to deal with weapons last. I'm going to see that he has 2 armors, and in the deck I only have 2 armors, so I'm good to go. I take those armors, put them back in his class deck. I then need 2 items, and I see that he has exactly 2 items. Crowbar, conch shell. Take them, put them in his deck. He's supposed to have 3 allies, and look at that, he has 3 allies. He's got his Master of Arms, his Standard Bearer, and his Quartermaster. So I put them in his deck, and he's ready to go on his allies. He's supposed to have 3 blessings. He has 3 blessings of the gods. That's perfect. Goes into his deck. Then we get the weapons. He's supposed to have 5, and he has 7. He's got a longsword, great sword, a glaive, a long spear, a mace, a shock glaive, and a great club. He has 2 extra weapons, or 2 extra cards in his deck, because he gained 2 cards at the end of the game, right? He got 1 random weapon as a reward, and he got 1 weapon 1 upgrade from the upgrade phase at the end of the scenario. But he's only allowed to have 5 weapons. He's only allowed to have 15 cards in his deck at this point in time, so we have to take 2 of those weapons away. Looking at the options, I'd probably get rid of the mace, and I would probably get rid of the long spear, since the shock glaive is kind of like a better version of that. Anyways, and I would take those 2, put them back with the weapons, leaving him the great club, the shock glaive, the glaive, the great sword, and the long sword. Take those 5, put them in his deck, and now he's got his 15 card deck. He's upgraded 2 of his weapons, and he is ready to go on to the next scenario. Alright, so that is rebuilding. This has been a tutorial on random rewards, upgrades, and rebuilding your deck at the end of the scenario for the Pathfinder Society Adventure Card Guild. If you have any thoughts, any questions, noticed any errors, leave a comment below. Thank you.